Cancel all the plans you have for 2025 because The Simpsons has already predicted the future.
A 300-year-old brewing disaster is coming, and The Simpsons totally called it. Sounds outlandish? That's exactly what NASA warned about in 2025. An environmental meltdown unlike anything humanity's seen in centuries. And guess which iconic cartoon seemingly foreshadowed the whole ordeal years before scientists rang the alarm? If you're on the edge of your seat, stay right there. The surprising rise of video calling. Back in 1995, The Simpsons aired the episode Lisa's Wedding, plunging viewers into a future where Lisa Simpson is all grown up and engaged. Among the dazzling futuristic details was one particular gadget that left fans raising an eyebrow, a wristwatch that not only told time, but also allowed for live video calls. At the time, this concept felt more like whimsical science fiction than a plausible reality. After all, the closest the 90s had come to video communication were chunky desktop webcams and expensive enterprise systems. The idea of speaking face-to-face on a tiny wrist-mounted screen seemed excessively far-fetched, even for the tech-savvy. Fast forward to the 2010s and beyond. Smartwatches like the Apple Watch, Samsung Galaxy Watch, and others became explosively popular, introducing capabilities that extend well beyond telling time. While early models focused on fitness tracking and quick notifications, it didn't take long for manufacturers and app developers to edge closer to video-capable devices. The technological leap that The Simpsons hinted at, casually chatting through a wristwatch, transitioned from cartoon fantasy into the features we see in prototypes or cutting-edge consumer gadgets. Coupled with mainstream video calling platforms like FaceTime, Zoom, and Skype, video-based communication has become part of everyday life. Many of us might still default to using our phones or computers, but the notion of video calls from wearable devices no longer induces the same disbelief it did in the mid-1990s. Critics often chalk such coincidences up to The Simpsons writers staying attuned to emerging technological ideas and simply exaggerating them for comedic effect. Nonetheless, fans can't help marveling at how the show managed to land on something that has since become so commonplace. In an age where remote work, online schooling, and long-distance friendships rely heavily on virtual face-to-face connections, it's safe to say that Lisa's Wedding displayed a vision stunningly in sync with our present and near future. As we edge closer to 2025, many wonder what new frontiers might emerge. Perhaps fully holographic wrist calls or integrated augmented reality features will push this prediction even further. Regardless, The Simpsons captured the essence of a tech revolution decades before we witnessed its widespread adoption, turning a simple comedic plot device into something that now feels like second nature. Autocorrect nightmares. In the 1994 episode Lisa on Ice, there's a brief but unforgettable scene where Springfield's resident bullies, Kearney and Dolph, attempt to jot down a threat on an early Apple device called the Newton. Kearney says, "Beat up Martin." But thanks to flawed handwriting recognition, the Newton translates it into "Eat up Martha." The humor lands immediately. Predictive text or smart devices can sometimes be hilariously off the mark. At the time, the joke poked fun at the Apple Newton's real-life reputation for poor handwriting recognition, but no one suspected it might foreshadow a universal 21st century annoyance. Today, nearly everyone has wrestled with the beast called autocorrect. You're typing a quick message on your phone, only to find your heartfelt text warped into an unintentionally comical or even embarrassing statement. The internet teems with memes and entire threads compiling the funniest or most mortifying autocorrect mishaps. While the technology behind predictive text has evolved considerably, benefiting from machine learning algorithms, language models, and crowdsourced vocabularies, the risk of a wayward word or jumbled phrase remains. Something as trivial as a single mistyped character can set off a chain of bizarre text suggestions. What's striking is how accurately The Simpsons planted this seed of comedic truth. In the mid-1990s, personal technology hadn't yet reached the point where everyday users would be intimately familiar with predictive text errors. Most people typed on physical keyboards and rarely encountered software that tried to guess or correct their words. However, as mobile phones gained traction, physical keyboards shrank, leading developers to pivot increasingly toward on-screen keyboards with autocorrect built in. Over time, this became the norm. Now in 2025, a day rarely goes by without someone complaining about, or laughing at, an autocorrect blunder. Voice-to-text technology, which relies on similar predictive algorithms, can produce equally hilarious misinterpretations. While the comedic potential is endless, these small moments also remind us how integrated and reliant we've become on technology that tries to think for us. Ironically, it was a single Simpsons scene that foreshadowed tens of thousands of text-gone-wrong anecdotes still unfolding every day. Future pandemic. The 1993 episode, Marge and Chains, primarily focuses on Marge landing in legal trouble after being wrongfully accused of shoplifting. Yet beneath this sitcom storyline is a startling subplot. A foreign virus, whimsically termed the Osaka flu, sweeps across Springfield, causing widespread panic and illness among residents. For a show that typically revels in comedic exaggeration, watching a rapid outbreak unfold in cartoon form felt offbeat. At the time, few could have predicted how uncomfortably close to home this scenario would resonate decades later. Fast forward to 2020, when the world faced the very real outbreak of COVID-19, along with headlines about murder hornets, an invasive species none too kindly nicknamed, making appearances in parts of North America. Suddenly, fans of The Simpsons drew parallels between this bizarre real-life convergence of a virus plus dangerous insects and the merciless comedic sequence in Marge and Chains, where townspeople accidentally unleash a swarm of killer bees after tipping over a crate. Of course, the actual pandemic was infinitely more severe than a cartoon plotline, bringing global economies to a standstill, overwhelming healthcare services, and changing daily life in ways unimaginable before 2020. What makes this particular prediction so memorable is both its specificity, an Asian-sourced virus converging with a swarm of harmful insects, and its comedic hyperbole. Could The Simpsons have foreseen a pandemic that would coincide with murder hornet headlines? Likely not intentionally, but the eerie similarities have helped cement the show's reputation as an unlikely crystal ball. As we progress through 2025, discussions about global health challenges and ecological changes have only intensified, amplifying the sense that we're living in a chain reaction of crises. NASA's modern-day warnings about accelerated climate shifts point to scenarios where viruses, pests, and changing habitats intersect more frequently, creating new threats. Ultimately, The Simpsons offered a comedic cautionary tale well before fast-moving viruses became global headlines. Whether it's a collective case of confirmation bias or writerly foresight, Marge and Chains stands as a testament to how normal fictional extremes can become when events align in the real world. It remains a wild example of how humor can unexpectedly mirror unsettling realities. Lisa Goes Gaga. In 2012, The Simpsons rolled out an episode titled Lisa Goes Gaga, featuring a cameo by the flamboyant pop star Lady Gaga herself. The cartoon portrayed an outlandish Springfield concert filled with glitter, eye-popping costumes, and one unforgettable moment. Lady Gaga soaring above the audience, attached to a series of cables. The setup was classic Simpsons humor, lampooning Gaga's theatrical style by pushing it to a seemingly ridiculous extreme. Most viewers assumed it was just a zany storyline capturing the star's essence in a comedic way. Yet just 5 years later, Lady Gaga delivered a Super Bowl 51 halftime performance that caused fans to double-take. Descending from the roof of Houston's NRG Stadium, she sported a shimmering outfit and utilized a wire suspension system to fly over the crowd. A sequence so reminiscent of the Simpsons episode that social media erupted with side-by-side comparisons. From her costume's futuristic gleam to her mid-air spectacle, the parallels were unmistakable. Suddenly, the Lisa Goes Gaga gag felt less like a parody and more like a direct blueprint for Gaga's real-life show. This curious instance begs the question: was Lady Gaga or her creative team inspired by the Simpsons snippet, or was it all a bizarre coincidence? The pop star is well known for her envelope-pushing art, so perhaps an aerial entrance at the Super Bowl was an inevitable extension of her brand. Nonetheless, the creative alignment between the animated version and the real performance only fueled the legend of The Simpsons, having a near-psychic ability to foresee the future. By 2025, large-scale spectacles at events have become even more high-tech. Drone light shows, holographic backgrounds, and interactive set pieces are all part of the entertainment landscape. If The Simpsons were to satirize Lady Gaga again, they might show her employing augmented reality confetti cannons or zero-gravity boots, ideas that, as wild as they sound, could still become tomorrow's halftime show shockers. Whether by chance or by design, Lisa Goes Gaga underscores the show's odd knack for comedic predictions that somehow sidestep the line between parody and genuine prophecy. It's another playful reminder that nothing is too wild for The Simpsons to imagine, and for real life to eventually mimic. The biggest disaster in 300 years. The notion of a catastrophic global crisis is a sobering shift from The Simpsons' usual comedic storylines. Yet, in the 2005 episode Future Drama, the show offered a fleeting glimpse of a world pushed to the brink, hinting at environmental upheaval and potential societal collapse. Most viewers wrote it off as another tongue-in-cheek depiction of Springfield's future. After all, who expects a cartoon to predict an actual once-in-300 years disaster? However, recent warnings from NASA have made this fictional scenario feel more urgent. According to research outlined in 2025, NASA painted a dire picture of intersecting crises, from rising sea levels to extreme weather events, escalating toward a tipping point that could reshape human life as we know it. Some fans draw parallels between the meltdown implied in Future Drama and these scientific findings, suggesting that what seemed like cartoon hyperbole might be edging closer to reality. While it's easy to chalk up such overlaps to coincidence or confirmation bias, the resonance is hard to ignore when public agencies are making urgent pleas about climate change and planetary health. In The Simpsons, the big crisis is injected with humor. Homer bungling a potential nuclear meltdown, or Springfield residents dismissing any sign of imminent danger. In real life, though, NASA's data about Arctic ice loss and rising global temperatures reveals a stark trend. Extreme weather events are growing more common, and communities in coastal regions worldwide are already facing floods, erosion, and saltwater intrusion. Meanwhile, inland areas endure record-breaking heat waves, droughts, and agricultural strain. These signs point to a crisis that isn't contained within the comedic universe of Springfield. As 2025 arrives, the seriousness of NASA's once-in-300 years warning suggests that immediate, large-scale action is needed. Mitigation strategies like cutting emissions, preserving forests, and investing in renewable energy have become recurring headlines, echoing the dire pleas of environmental advocates. The Simpsons' whimsical meltdown story doesn't offer solutions, but it does encourage us to see how art, even comedic art, can foreshadow real challenges. Donald Trump's second presidency. Donald Trump's return to the White House has been both riveting and shocking, unless you're a devout Simpsons fan who recalls the uncanny predictions scattered throughout the show's decades-long run. In the 2000 episode Bart to the Future, Springfield's writers threw in a gag about a future President Trump. At the time, it was a laughable scenario that symbolized a world gone topsy-turvy. When Trump actually won in 2016, fans rewatched that episode and marveled at how absurd fantasy had morphed into reality. Now, with Trump securing another victory in 2024, the conversation around The Simpsons' predictions has only intensified. Some argue it's simply a comedic coincidence, an outlandish idea that happened to line up with actual political currents. Others see it as further evidence that The Simpsons has an uncanny knack for lampooning future events. Of course, the show's offbeat version of a Trump presidency centers on America dealing with an epic budget crisis, with Lisa Simpson inheriting all the mess. Real-world parallels come in the form of relentless debates on national debt, foreign policies, and social issues polarizing the country more than ever. For Trump's supporters, this second presidency signals a chance to continue the agenda they feel was cut short, believing it will reinvigorate economic growth and reassert American influence. Critics worry that a second term amplifies division, intensifying partisan conflicts and global uncertainties. Meanwhile, the Simpsons watchers shrug and say, "We saw this coming," pointing to everything from President Trump references to jokes about political turmoil that strangely mirror current headlines. By 2025, the question isn't just whether The Simpsons predicted Trump's second presidency, but what deeper truths the cartoon might convey. Are we simply noticing coincidences? Or does the show's satirical spotlight on cultural and political trends reliably capture the country's future trajectory? Bart to the Future might have been written as harmless satire, yet here we are, living the scenario its creators dreamed up long ago. The rise of virtual yard work. When the 1998 episode Bart Carney of The Simpsons aired, most viewers focused on the carnival chaos that Bart and Homer stirred up. However, hidden in that storyline was a curious detail about Yard Work Simulator, a virtual reality game that captivated Bart's attention. Marge's reaction, telling Bart that if he's eager to rake virtual leaves, he could do the real task in the backyard, seemed like straightforward comedic commentary on lazy escapism. Who would have guessed how relevant that joke would become? Over 2 decades later, the world has witnessed a boom in virtual and augmented reality technology. Major companies like Meta, Sony, Valve, and HTC have developed headsets that immerse players in digital environments. The range of experiences has grown to include everything from high-octane space battles to mundane chores like cooking, farming, and, yes, even yard work simulations. What The Simpsons parodied as a silly premise, escaping real chores by doing them virtually, has in some ways become a quirky reality. People today use VR not only for daring adventures, but also for relaxing, meditative experiences where they can perform everyday tasks without ever stepping outside. Some critics see these games as emblematic of modern society's detachment from practicality, questioning why one would simulate a chore that could easily be done in real life. Others argue that these lighter, low-stress VR experiences serve as a form of meditation or gentle entertainment. In a fast-paced world, even a virtual yard can offer a sense of calm and accomplishment. No real dirt under the fingernails required. Approaching 2025, virtual reality continues to expand beyond gaming. Businesses use VR for training modules, colleges offer virtual classrooms, and healthcare providers test VR therapies for pain management or mental health support. The comedic jab from Bart Carney underscores a larger trend. Technology often fulfills what once seemed like absurd fantasies, blurring the line between the practical and the escapist. The Simpsons never claimed to be a serious tech oracle, yet this brief gag about simulated leaf raking feels increasingly apt. Disney buys Fox. In a 1998 episode of The Simpsons, fans might remember a brief sight gag, a sign declaring 20th Century Fox, a division of Walt Disney Company. At the time, it seemed like a harmless bit of comedic exaggeration. Disney was already a juggernaut in entertainment, but the notion of it swallowing a titan like Fox felt far-fetched for most viewers. Then, in 2019, reality caught up with Springfield. Disney officially acquired 21st Century Fox for a staggering $52 billion, merging 2 colossal media empires and stunning an already competitive industry. From today's vantage point in 2025, the aftermath of that deal has significantly altered the pop culture landscape. Iconic properties such as X-Men and Avatar, not to mention The Simpsons itself, now sit under the Disney umbrella, creating new opportunities for crossover events, franchise expansions, and ambitious streaming content. Disney's strategic moves have influenced everything from how films are distributed to the marketing strategies behind beloved animated series and summer blockbusters. The once unthinkable merger opened doors to synergy that fans have only dreamed of, like potential crossovers between Marvel heroes and Fox-owned characters. Yet not everyone greeted the acquisition with unbridled enthusiasm. Media consolidation raises concerns about creative freedom and marketplace competition. Critics worry that folding so many big-name franchises under one banner stifles artistic risk-taking and puts immense power in the hands of a few executives. Independent studios and smaller productions may find it even harder to secure deals, competing with the industry's new mega player. Despite these legitimate worries, Disney's leadership insists that the merged suite of assets encourages greater innovation and helps finance high-quality content on a massive scale. In hindsight, that one quick Simpsons gag feels oddly prophetic. Was it a tongue-in-cheek guess, a savvy nod from writers who recognize Disney's corporate ambitions, or just playful satire that hit the bullseye? Whatever the explanation, fans have relished pointing to this prediction as yet another example of the show's strange knack for aligning its fictional jokes with real-world events. Shard's London skyline. Lisa's Wedding, the 1995 Simpsons episode, is widely revered for its flurry of futuristic glimpses, some comedic, some strangely on point. Alongside its hints at smartwatch tech, fans have often spotlighted the show's depiction of a tall, pointed structure looming in London's skyline. At the time, this was just a throwaway flourish, ink on a cartoon backdrop meant to give the city a more futuristic feel. Nobody anticipated that more than a decade later, an actually tall, spiky edifice, the Shard, would begin rising above London, echoing that Simpsonian silhouette in real life. By the time construction wrapped up in 2012, viewers who remembered this episode couldn't help but draw parallels. The angle, the shape, and its dominating presence over the city were uncannily reminiscent of the cartoon's predicted skyline. In truth, the element of coincidence looms large. Futuristic animations often feature spire-shaped skyscrapers to denote tomorrow. Still, architecture moves at a measured pace, typically undergoing protracted design and approval processes before appearing in physical form. For The Simpsons to capture something so similar in 1995, well before any formal public blueprint, certainly fuels the show's oracle mystique. Fans lump the Shard example among other eerie parallels, like Disney buying Fox or the show's comedic sketches about environmental catastrophes that, in 2025, suddenly feel more tangible given NASA's dire climate warnings. Of course, the focus on the Shard centers on style more than substance. The vibrantly modern tower quickly became one of London's defining icons, shifting the city's world-famous skyline with a sharp, crystalline flourish. Observers now reflect on how Lisa's Wedding seemed to have an uncanny eye for near-future design. Could the artists have inadvertently mirrored architectural trends that were already percolating? Perhaps the Simpsons creative team consulted real-life proposals destined to evolve into a major build. Or maybe it was just serendipity that a spiky glass tower happens to look futuristic enough to spur city planners in real life. Regardless, this Simpsons prediction is a prime example of how pop culture shapes or precedes reality, even with something as large-scale and improbable as a 300-meter skyscraper. FaceTime. In the very same 1995 episode, Lisa's Wedding, The Simpsons introduced a futuristic style of communication that looked suspiciously akin to modern-day FaceTime or Zoom. Lisa, calling Marge from an advanced phone-turned-visual communicator, offered a whimsical window into what the late 20th century perceived as tomorrow tech. At the time, video calling felt straight out of science fiction, a trope used in everything from 2001, A Space Odyssey, to niche sci-fi comics. However, unlike many other fictional predictions, flying cars, robot butlers, mainstream video calling quickly jumped from fantasy to reality within a couple of decades. By 2025, services like Apple's FaceTime, Google Meet, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and countless specialized platforms have eclipsed even The Simpsons' playful forecasts. Fans who revisit that moment in Lisa's Wedding are often struck by how casually The Simpsons characters treat video communication. No big fuss about the technology itself, just day-to-day usage for calls that happen to be face-to-face. That humdrum attitude ironically foreshadows our own stance on the technology. Once a novelty, video calling is now a staple for family check-ins, remote work, social gatherings, and even international conferences. The reliance on real-time video soared during global crises, including the COVID-19 pandemic. Moreover, The Simpsons showcased the potential for a more interconnected future, where physical location doesn't hamper relationships or productivity. Indeed, we have well surpassed the watch phone glimpses and now inhabit a space where ephemeral holograms, augmented reality overlays, and immersive VR teleconferencing systems are not just prototypes, but plausible developments on the tech horizon. The comedic brilliance of that blink and you'll miss it scene rests in how it so calmly normalized an outlandish piece of technology. Today, we do the exact same thing. Dial up a friend across the globe with a button press. No elaborate sense of wonder or big reveal. If The Simpsons continues to depict these futures, who's to say they won't pinpoint the next big leap in how we communicate, be it holographic calls or integrated neural interfaces, long before it surfaces in everyday reality?